All right. So hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for yet another edition of OPAC's Virtual Ocean Cafe series. Tonight's talk will be about the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts National Marine Monument and will be given by our guest, Dr. Kelly Chris. While we wish we could be with you in person, we are grateful that technology lets us continue to learn together. My name is Jeffrey Morgan, and I am the co-founder and executive director of Ocean Protection Advocacy Kids, or OPAC for short. OPAC's mission is to empower youth to become curious ambassadors for the environment through the arts. We do this through a series of K through 12 marine science, art, and advocacy lessons for students across the country. While our main focus is on educating youth, we also strive to create a more ocean literate and engaged community. Our Ocean Cafe series is just one example of how we do that. We are able to offer these talks for free thanks to the generosity of our supporters like yourself. If it is within your means, we do ask that you consider making a contribution to OPAC and our mission of empowering the next generation of ocean heroes. Tonight's live talk is here on Zoom and will also be broadcast to our Facebook page, as well as recorded for our YouTube channel. Make sure that you like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you are the first one to know about future OPAC events. We ask that you please keep yourself muted throughout tonight's presentation. If you have questions during the talk, please use the chat function on Zoom and the comment section on Facebook. There will also be time for questions at the end of our guest presentation. With that, I am very pleased to introduce Dr. Kelly Chris. Kelly is the Director of Conservation Policy and Leadership at the Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life at the New England Aquarium, where she is focused on transforming science into action that protects our blue planet. Kelly is also an adjunct professor at Georgetown University and an active member of OPAC's board of directors. Kelly's past roles have included positions with the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, the US State Department, and a decade within the nonprofit sector. As an energy and environmental policy professional, she works tirelessly to advance science and shape solutions to the grave threats that our ocean faces, like climate change, overfishing, and pollution. With that, please join me in welcoming Kelly to tonight's Ocean Cafe.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. It's so nice to see all of you, and I can't wait till we get to the Q&A when we can have a little dialogue. But to get a little bit of an interaction going, for those of you who feel comfortable and want to put in the chat, I'd love to know if you already know like what your level of knowledge is about the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument. And I'd love to know also where you're joining us from. And for those of you who might be in the center of our country and impacted by the extreme weather, I hope that you and your loved ones are all doing well and are remaining safe and healthy. With that, I'm going to share my screen. I do have a presentation, but as questions come in, I'd love to really kind of address them as they're coming in. So, however, whatever works best for this group, we can do it. We can do it in that way. So. Let me just share my screen, and of course, you're going to see the final slide up because that's where it's at. So, hang on. Where is the share screen? I've been doing this for a year and yet it's still a mystery. So, all right. Jeffrey, you'll have to guide me and tell me what we're seeing. Are you all seeing?
We are seeing your PowerPoint. It's just at the end. Like
okay, you're now seeing it fast forward backwards while I get to my actual title slide. Okay, I'm going to try to duck the...
Yeah. While you're doing that, just so you know, people are joining in from all over. We have Washington State,
good.
Florida, Seattle, Boston, Connecticut.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Okay, great. All right, well, as Jeffrey mentioned, tonight we're going to be learning a little bit about the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument. Before we dig right into the monument, I'm going to take us to a little bit of a higher level and talk about, let's see, the ocean. And do a little bit of scene setting. I'm an oceanographer by training, and so I've been thinking about the ocean for a very long time, and I'm a climate scientist as well. And so really thinking about the ocean is the driver of atmospheric change. It's been key to how much it's being buffered, how much the ocean has buffered the effects of climate change as well. And so when I think about climate change, I really think about the ocean as the hero in this story. And so as this slide kind of sets that up, the ocean helps sustain all life on Earth. Many of you might know that the microbes and the phytoplankton in the ocean generate as much as 50% of the oxygen we breathe. So you might have heard for every second breath you take, you should think an ocean microbe. And it's really critical to the global fight against climate change. And this is important as we go through the entire narrative of the story, because marine protected areas really play a key role in this. So just as a high level, again, as I mentioned, the ocean has been really playing an outsized role in helping the Earth maintain its habitability as we've been changing the climate through emissions of fossil fuels like carbon dioxide. And so the ocean, as you can see in this image, has taken up 93%, a little more than 93% of all of the excess heat that was in the atmosphere. The ocean is taking that up. If we didn't have the ocean, the planet would be much, much hotter than it is right now. But there is a limit to how much the ocean can do that. So as it's been taking up the heat and that carbon dioxide, we've started to observe changes in our ocean. As you can expect, all that heat is warming the ocean water. It's changing the chemistry of the water and making it more acidic. And it's also causing there to be less oxygen in the water, which of course, as oxygen breathing organisms ourselves, we understand how difficult it can be when there's less oxygen. I'm focused because New England Aquarium and I personally am in Massachusetts, and the work that we do is really focus on this region. So for those of you who don't know, the Gulf of Maine, which you can see right here, which is basically coastal New England, other than the southern part here, is warming faster than 99% of the global ocean. That's an extraordinary thing to be happening in our little neighborhood up here. And so what the other piece you can see here is that for the past 30 years, the Gulf of Maine has been warming by 0.06 degrees Celsius. So Celsius is more than Fahrenheit per year, which is not insignificant for the wildlife that lives in the ocean, particularly fish and lobsters. All of this is starting to move because just like us, all of those animals want to be in their preferred temperature range. And so they are migrating to try and find that preferred temperature range. All right. Okay. So the good news is the ocean is resilient. And we've been doing a lot of science, so we understand a lot about what's happening, but we do need to take bold and decisive action. And because of the science and because of the advocacy, we know what we need to do, and we have the ability to do it. We just need to help the ocean along so that it can repair itself. So one of the tools that we have to do that is there are a number of ways we can increase the resilience of the ocean. And let's take resilience to mean the health of the ocean. One of the ways we can do that is by setting aside places, protecting them from the impacts of human activities. We can also work really hard to manage our fisheries in a sustainable manner. And the United States is a real leader in this. And then the other way we can increase the resilience of our ocean systems is to stop the flow of pollution into the ocean, specifically plastic, but other types of pollution like chemical and nutrients are really important too. But today's talk, I'm really going to focus on protecting the ocean as a tool to increase the resilience. And one of the main ways that we protect the ocean is through what's called marine protected areas. These are areas that are set aside with the goal of conserving biodiversity, enhancing resilience, helping fisheries. Inside protected areas, if you're not allowed to fish, the fish get fat and they have more babies. and sometimes that spills over outside the boundaries of a protected area. Protected areas help to restore endangered species and ecosystems. They serve as sites for education and research, and depending on what kind of access you might have to a protected area, there's also the opportunity for tourism and other economic benefits. Now, there's a number of ways that protected areas are defined. And so I've just noted kind of some of those definitions. Fully protected, I think these are pretty self-explanatory. Fully protected areas don't allow any activities. You can't fish, you can't mine, you certainly can't do oil and gas. You can't, they try to limit the amount of entirely the human activities happening in there, aside from non-impactful activities, potentially like boating. So then highly protected and lightly protected, minimally protected. And there's a great deal of marine protected areas that we would say in kind of the work that I do are in name only. So something's been designated as a protected area, but may not actually have protections from human activities, or those the protections might not be enforced, and that's true globally. Okay. So in the United States, I pulled this map from NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's a government agency. They in 2020 released a whole report on the status of marine protected areas in the United States. And I thought that this was a good overview of what's protected in the United States. And you can see that that includes state waters. So 26% of their accounting suggests that our lands and our waters, so that you can also see here that that includes some Great Lake area and oceans, have some level of protection. But this doesn't delineate, based on the slide I just showed you, between what's minimally protected versus what you can see are the red areas, which is a no-take marine protected area, meaning it has the highest level of protections. This is Hawaii here. And then these are a number of the Pacific Island territories of the United States. And you can see that the bulk of protected areas fall in the Pacific remote regions of the United States, exclusive economic zone. And then right here is my favorite monument, and the one that we're going to be focused on for the rest of the talk. And this is the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts. But before we go there, sorry, I forgot this slide was here. There was also this really great, accounting for states and who has protected areas. So because we're based in Massachusetts, I was really pleased to see that 84% of state waters have some level of protection, and that's in blue. The red, corresponding to the previous slide, is the no-take areas again. And you can see that at least in Massachusetts, there's 0% of fully protected areas. Let's see, I heard there was Washington. Let's see, Washington's doing all right, 30% there, but again, 0 of fully protected. Jeffrey, who else was there?
We had Florida, New Hampshire, Connecticut.
Okay, Florida, 54, New Hampshire.
And Oregon.
14, Oregon. 9. Oh, but look, Oregon's the first one we've gotten to that actually has some fully protected areas. All right, so you can see the range of this, and I believe, there's some states here who don't have coastal. They're not on the coast, so maybe this would not be a priority for them. Okay, so anyway, this is again in that NOAA report. I'm just going to go back if anybody wants to look at that. The website is here for marineprotectedareas.noaa.gov, and you're looking for the Marine Protected Areas 2020 report. Okay, so now I want to focus on the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument, which is this extraordinary place, just 130 miles off of Cape Cod in Massachusetts. And let's see, it was established in 2016 by President Obama using authority under the Antiquities Act. And I'm happy to answer questions about this. There's lots of different ways you can designate a marine protected area. A monument typically has very strong protections. So it's one of the best tools you can do if you want to establish a fully protected or highly protected area in the ocean. It's the only marine national monument in the continental United States, not just the Atlantic Ocean, but the entire continental United States. All of those other protected areas, there's 5 total marine national monuments. 4 of those are in the Pacific remote regions of the US EEZ, or exclusive economic zones. As I mentioned, it's 130 miles from Cape Cod, and it's about 5,000 square miles, which is just a tiny little postage stamp in the ocean. Now, if you look at the map, there's 2 units of the monument. There's the canyons unit, which is here, and there's the seamount unit. And if you see this little red line here, that's the edge of the U.S. exclusive economic zone. So this monument goes right to the edge of the US EEZ, but they are not connected. So they kind of have 2 different ecosystems, but and the one that is closest are the canyons. So those are the ones that we've done the most scientific research on. So that's mostly what you'll see today is images from the canyons unit. Okay, let's see. All right, this is a 3D rendering of the monument. I'm going to push play, and you're going to be taken on what we're calling a flyover. So you'll get a real sense of the scale of the monument and see what it's like underwater. Okay, so I'm just going to push play. And Jeffrey, if this is not playing for you, I'll just flag. There's no audio here, so I can walk you through it, but we're now flying over Massachusetts and Cape Cod, and we're just going to dip underwater here. And you can see the Gulf of Maine. And then we're going to approach the continental shelf here. And it's very steep drop off, so hopefully nobody gets vertigo. And you can see how dramatic the drop off of the shelf is as we head over the continental break and into the abyssal plain. And as we reorient to look back towards the continent, you can see how many canyons there are on our shelf. And now as we pull back a little bit, you can start to see the seamounts as well. So only 3 of those canyons you're looking at are part of the monument itself. And I think it's 5 of the seamounts, 4. It was on the previous slide. 4. Okay, perfect. So there it is. All right, and the 3 canyons are oceanographer Gilbert and Lydonia. Okay, why are the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts so special? I can tell you the New England Aquarium since 2017 has been doing somewhere between 2 and 4 aerial flights over the canyons unit to see what we can see. And every time they go out there, they see an enormous amount of life at the surface. You know, just pods of dolphins that are sometimes 1,000 to 1,200 individuals strong. We see all sorts of whales and dolphins, so tons of marine mammals. There's seabirds, there's turtles. So this is a really special place. We don't see that type of activity elsewhere in the in the Northwest Atlantic, the Northeast United States. So some of the things we understand from a basic oceanographic perspective, right? There's all these corals at the bottom and they produce nutrients, but the canyons themselves, you saw how steep those were. So the water is getting upwelled, what we call the physical process that brings deep water that's nutrient rich to the surface. And then what happens is all of the things at the surface want to feed on that. And so what we see is a huge, robust kind of food chain. And what you're looking at here in this image, I don't know if hopefully your screens are big enough, but this pink area, those are all squid. All right, so they've come to feed on the krill and the small fish. And then right here, you can see a dolphin. Here's one too. And they are just at a total seafood buffet. So it's a really nice place for them to come. They eat, they bring their babies, they play. And so it's just a really diverse area. And we see that at the surface, which means that what's below is also probably pretty dynamic. Okay, so from our aerial surveys, these are some of the magnificent creatures that we've seen. And so this is a whale shark. We've seen a couple of these. We don't see them every time. We've seen a manta ray this far north, pretty amazing. This is a sperm whale, obviously a turtle, and we were very excited. It was winter last year that we got our first blue whale. And you can see that it's also accompanied by some dolphin friends here. And then this is just an image where you can see not obviously all 1,200 animals, but you can see how many animals congregate together in this special place. Okay, I'm going to show you one more video. It's about 5 minutes, but it takes you underwater, and there's some narration here. So I thought it'd be a good way for you to get a sense of what you can see underwater. And hopefully this is also going to work. So bear with me. Are we good? Jeffrey?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to push play and sit back while you guys enjoy the film.
I don't think people understand that more than half of the U.S. territory is underwater. But we have almost another nation underwater that we don't understand and rarely explore. Off our coast, the United States, we have these canyons. If we could drain the water from the ocean, you would see something that would dwarf the Grand Canyon. There's almost 90 of them between Canada and South Carolina, and I would say less than 1% of them have been explored.
The Northeast Canyons National Marine Monument was established in 2016 by the Obama administration. The importance of its establishment is that it allows us to really study and better understand these incredibly unique geological areas. Every time scientists go out to these areas, they're seeing things they've not seen before. Here at the New England Aquarium, we've been watching this area for decades, and we know that there is an incredible abundance of wildlife and diversity there.
One of our primary goals is to establish protected areas in New England's ocean. And what's really exciting about the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts is we're only beginning to discover what's there.
When you leave the surface, it's a new world out here. It's a different world. Oh, just like that. A really large billfish came through here just now. These are remarkable places on our planet where life aggregates and comes to be.
The Northeast Canyons and Seamounts, it's known as the Serengeti of the Atlantic. It's a biodiversity hotspot. It's home to about 75 different species of deep sea corals. It's truly extraordinary for the wildlife that it supports there.
These corals are not like shallow water reef corals you might think about. Deep sea corals don't rely on sunlight at all. Instead of being broad and flat like a reef you might find in the Caribbean, they stand more up like trees. And they put themselves out into the current. And because they stand out into the water, animals like to get on them. There's lots of other animals that also want those passive particles that they could feed on. There'll be brittle stars and crabs, shrimp, worms. These corals interact with other animal life in a really weird way. They allow certain animals to get on them and other animals to not get on them. There's communication at a tissue or cellular level that we don't understand yet. When I think about medical procedures that require acceptance of tissue, I think about the corals and products from the marine environment that help in medicines.
Oceans around the world are facing mounting threats from overfishing, pollution, oil and gas drilling, and now climate change. Climate change is impacting our oceans in ways that we're only beginning to understand.
These areas are warming 99% faster than any other body of water. The ocean is the life support system for our planet, and we need to be protecting these vitally rich and diverse areas so that we can continue to study them and we can continue to make sure that the ocean thrives and therefore allows us to thrive.
As a scientist, I can tell you we discover something new every time we go out. That's been my drive, to discover things, to uncover mysteries that we can then solve. There are no other monuments like this in the Atlantic. It's our American heritage. It's part of our national resource, our underwater America, and there's no reason why every American shouldn't know that we have this monument and what's in it.
Okay. Before I move on to what's going on with the monument itself, seeing Dr. Schenk in that video reminded me I really should have thanked him for sharing that flyover rendering of the monument. So that was from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts, and really all the credit for that goes to Dr. Tim Schenk. So why were we talking about the monument? I feel like I've been talking about the monument since I started the aquarium 3 years ago. We were so excited when it was designated. New England Aquarium and Mystic Aquarium together, we provided the scientific justification to the Obama administration that this place was worthy of protection. And that happened in late 2016. And of course, the administration changed in 2017. And there were early signals that many of the monuments designated during the Obama administration, but not just Obama, Bush and Clinton, that those were being reviewed and recommendations to weaken the protections in these special places were being made by the administration. So the aquarium, along with a coalition of partners across our region, across the United States, have really been thinking how best to make sure that this area remains protected. But in June 2020, so just 6 months ago, former President Trump came up to our region and signed a proclamation weakening protections for the monument. And what that means for this monument is that it allowed commercial fishing to resume in the monument. So when the monument was designated, it was protected from most human activities, including fishing, mining, oil and gas development, and those types of things. So it was a highly protected area. But this allowed the commercial fishing to resume. Now, recreational fishing was always allowed in the monument, so that did not change. And then in January 2020, so just six months later, on day one, President Biden announced in an executive order that he was launching a 60-day review of this monument, but also the two monuments that maybe you have heard of in Utah, which are Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante, to see what the feasibility of restoring protections to the monuments are. And so as a supporter of the monument, we at the New England Aquarium and others are really very excited and hopeful that President Biden will restore protections to the monument. So as always, we have to do a call for action. And so there are a couple things you can do if you choose and you want to alert first your elected officials, particularly your senators and your representative, and tell them that you support restoring protections to the monument. Specifically, this is the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument. But if you love those other two, please don't hold back. We'd love to see those restorations happen for Bears Ears and Grand Staircase as well. And those are both in Utah. The second thing you can do is this monument, if it's restored to high protections, will contribute to a global call to protect 30% of the planet's lands and waters by 2030, and that's the minimum amount needed. Really, that scientists are calling for to make sure that the planet can heal itself, and so I'm putting both of these in, and there's a petition that Environment America is doing. They just released last week a really beautiful report called The New Life for the Ocean. And so I tried to put the link in, but it's really long and I didn't think anybody wanted to write that down. So if you just Google New Life for the Ocean and Environment America, you'll find the report. And if you scroll down to the end of that page, you'll see the petition that you can sign. So those are just two things you can do. And I'd be happy to discuss in a little more detail anything that we mentioned, anything that's tangentially related to this. If you have more ideas of what you can do to protect our special places in the United States, both land and water, I'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my portion of this, and I'm looking forward to just talking with you all and thinking through. And learning what you care about and how we can work together to protect our planet. Okay, with that, I think I'm going to stop sharing. Is that right, Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm back.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That was great. We did have a few questions come in, but before I get to those, the one question I have right off the bat, you mentioned enforcement challenges a little bit earlier in the presentation. What enforcement is there for this particular monument?
That's a really great question. In the United States, monuments are required to have what are called management plans, and most of our US monuments are still waiting for the management plan. So to my knowledge, the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts doesn't yet have a management plan. It is, again, 130 miles to the closest land. So these are the challenges with enforcement in marine protected areas, is they're often far away. You can't see what's happening. So we depend on a lot of satellite surveillance. Ships have and fishing boats have electronic transmitters that kind of give us a sense of who's in the area. We do not announce when we're going to do an aerial flight. So when we're out there, we take account of who is in the monument, just as a way. Not only are we tracking animals, we also make note of any marine debris that's out there, any vessel traffic, and traffic totally is legal, and now fishing is too. So it's just if we can get eyes on it, that's the best way to kind of do enforcement. Yeah,
which, as you said, is difficult when it's 130 miles away by boat. So just a couple of the questions that came in for you. The first one was, are your aerial surveys done by plane or drone based off of a boat?
We fly. We fly out there, which is why we only do it a couple times a year. We need to find a weather window. It's a dangerous flight. It's kind of an all-day endeavor, and they do when they're out there, it's 4 people in the plane, 2 pilots and 2 scientists with cameras, and then we've got a bottom-mounted camera to kind of get us, so we see as much as possible, and they fly a grid across the entire canyons unit. And we're starting to, after doing this for almost 4 years, we're starting to get some really beautiful results as we go out there during different seasons. What are we seeing? Is there a seasonality difference? Are different animals using the canyon for different reasons at different times?
In addition to those surveys, are there research vessels from the aquarium going out there as well?
Not from the aquarium. So there are research vessels who have been out there. Most recently, you would have seen in the video with Dr. Shank, Oceans X had a cruise out there. NOAA, the Okeanos, the Okeanos goes out there, and if you want to, Okeanos and NOAA makes all of their research imagery available to the public. So you can go look at the cruises from any of the canyons really in the Atlantic and see the amazing wildlife from when they send the submersible down. You can see the corals and the fish and the shy octopuses. And it's really remarkable. You know, when you go to I keep thinking when you go to a national park, depending on where you are, you kind of hope you see that elusive animal, that thing that maybe is there but is endangered and you might not see it. And going to the canyons and seamounts in these videos is like, they've already cherry picked some of the best stuff for you. So you get to see all that stuff.
Yeah. I always feel like a little kid in a candy shop when I see those videos, just like you never know what you're going to get.
You never know.
Yeah. Just a few other questions that came in while we were chatting here. In the protection regulations or rules, are there criteria for Indigenous folks and their ways of living? And do these regulations stop all race and cultures from interaction with spaces?
No, not at all. And in fact, for monuments, especially the land-based ones, especially the two in Utah, those were set up with consultation with the Indigenous communities and are specifically protecting their heritage and places of importance for those communities. It has been a little bit more of a challenge on the offshore environment, but we know that during the last glacial maximum, this is now, we're now in my dissertation territory. So thank you for this question. I never get to talk about my dissertation, but the ocean was 121 meters lower, which takes us out to that shelf break. And so if the ocean wasn't there, obviously 130 miles out, there were probably human civilizations or people using that land differently. And so thinking about any cultural or archaeological places of significance offshore is really important. And the monument out in Hawaii, and I have been trying for a very long time to figure out how to say this, but I have only gotten through the first couple of syllables, but Papahana, it's a very long one. I apologize to the Hawaiians for not being able to pronounce this yet, but that monument was established in consultation and in partnership with the Hawaiian people to reflect the cultural significance and ties to the ocean. And so it really depends on the monument, but I think I just want to read the question to make sure I got this. And the regulations, so no, almost all monuments you can visit. You know, you can go and there might be places that are protected from any sort of human, you know, you wouldn't want graffiti or too many people walking on something. And you know, just this past year, I used to live in Australia, and one of the key sacred places in Australia is what we might know as Ayers Rock, but is called Uluru, and is the big monolithic red rock. It's pretty iconic for Australia. And just this past year, they finally won. The Aboriginal community finally was able to stop people from hiking up Ayers Rock or Uluru. And so those are the types of things that we would consider in our monuments. But for the most part, you can visit. There'd be nothing preventing anybody from sailing out to the monument and seeing what you can see. You have to stay a safe distance away from all marine mammals under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, but you can certainly see them. So I hope that answered that question, but I'm happy to come back to it if I didn't get it.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good tie-in to do you have educational exhibits at the aquarium, and how do you present your research there?
Yeah, so let's see. It has been so long since I have actually been inside the aquarium, since last March. But we have on our third floor a whole area dedicated to marine sanctuaries from the West Coast to the East Coast. And we have a sanctuary also in the Gulf of Maine called Stellwagen. And sanctuaries are slightly different. They tend to, they're set up to using a different process, but they also tend to allow multiple uses. And in the case of Stellwagen, almost all uses are permitted in Stellwagen, so it wouldn't qualify as highly protected or fully protected. But we do talk about marine protected areas at the aquarium, and just a shout out to Mystic Aquarium. If anybody's there, they do have a whole exhibit dedicated to the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Monument. So you can go there and see a little bit more and learn a little bit more than I can cover here tonight.
Thank you. Next question I have is from a former professor of mine, Professor Bryant. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thought I'd do a little shout out for you. What are the lessons learned from the Marine National Monument advocacy and designation process from the aquarium's perspective?
Oh gosh, advocacy is tough. It can, it's a challenge to figure out what motivates different stakeholders. The monument is not without controversy because of the prohibition of commercial fishing. And so thinking through really what are the arguments for setting aside this tiny, what we would consider this tiny little area from fishing in an effort to really safeguard the ocean for all generations to come. That protecting these areas creates a resilient ocean and ensures that that not only we're buffered, we continue to be buffered against climate change, but that fisheries continue to exist. So but it is really complicated when you make your life on the ocean and all of a sudden an area is set aside that does not benefit you directly. So but what the New England Aquarium really relies on is science. We do the science, we use the science, and the science informs good decision making. And it was our science that informed the decision to designate this monument in the first place. And so in the years since, we've only gotten more evidence that that the decision to designate this based on the science was the right decision.
That also brings me to another question I had from something you just said. How do you get people that aren't near the coast to appreciate and advocate and care for more marine protection? And I bring that up because we didn't go into it as much, but you mentioned Stellwagen, and for the sanctuary process, it has to get passed through law. How do you get a senator from an inland state representative to care? And
sometimes that's easier because it's not their backyard.
Yeah.
It's not their fishing community. It's not so sometimes that can be a little bit easier to get people who support conservation in general. But I would say when it comes to the ocean, it's 70% of our planet. It drives all of our processes. So even if you live in Iowa, it is driving if it's flooding on the Mississippi. It is driving whether you get rain and the farms are going to be productive that season. It has driven the Arctic vortex that is wreaking havoc in parts of our country right now. And so I think that as ocean scientists, as ocean educators, as ocean advocates, making sure that we're doing a good job really sharing how interconnected the planet is, how interconnected we are to each other, and that it doesn't matter where you are, the ocean plays a role in your life. And so if you want to protect something, we've got to protect and preserve the places where we are. If you're in the middle of the country, what happens to the Mississippi River affects the Gulf of Mexico. If you are on one side of the continental divide or the other, we have to protect our waterways, whether they're fresh, whether they are saline or salty, and we have to protect the land. And so if it's pollution from single-use plastics or excess nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen from farming practices and other things, all of that ultimately affects the ocean. And then the ocean in turn affects, if you're in California, whether or not there's a raging wildfire season. As nights in places, I'm physically in Arizona right now, where it gets hotter and hotter at night, so you don't even get a respite from the heat. All of these things are interconnected. So I hope that kind of answers your question, Jeffrey, but
Yep.
I'm happy I could do this one all day long.
Yeah. No, I think that answered my question. And I will finish with one more question that we had come in from an OPAC student, actually. And it was, how could a high school organize a senator or representative contact campaign for the monument? And is there a good place or best place to start?
Oh, super easy. First of all, go to, I think it's Find Your Representative. I should have looked this up. It's Find Your Representative. You type in your zip code and your address, and it'll tell you, if you don't already know, who your senators and your representative are, and a way to contact them. And when they hear from constituents, they respond. So people telling them, unlike say me, who they hear from all the time, and they know what to expect from the New England Aquarium. They know what our position is, but to hear from their actual voting constituents is the most meaningful thing. I used to work for the Senate, and I know that we bent over backwards to make sure that we responded to every piece of constituent mail that we got. And the more constituents weigh in on a specific thing, that can really change the balance of whose voice is being heard.
Yeah. And as I always say to our students, we need to be the voice for the ocean, because the ocean doesn't have a voice. Getting our voice to the people that can help the ocean even more through law and these regulations is awesome. With that, I think I'm gonna wrap things up, because I know we're all feeling a little Zoom fatigue these days, but like I said at the beginning, I'm just so happy that we do still have a platform that we can all, at least virtually, come together, learn about our oceans, learn how to advocate for our oceans, stay curious about our oceans. And I would like to do a virtual round of applause and thank you to Kelly for joining us this evening.
Thank you. I want to give a call out to Tiffany for getting Papa, the whole name, into the chat for everyone. So thank you. And I'm absolutely mortified I didn't know that. So please forgive me.
Yeah. And with that, normally I would have like a nice round of applause in person, but ending a Zoom meeting is always kind of funny. But thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that everyone can join us for our next edition of our Ocean Cafe series as well.